Really just depends on how many questions we get along the way. You might get some time back if we plow through the content. Today we're looking at Sage 50 accounts. Specifically it's the chart of accounts. And I think having a good understanding of the chart of accounts helps you to have a good understanding of the nominal ledger. So if you're setting up new codes, that type of thing, you'll know sort of, because of the way the chart of accounts works, what sort of number to give it, what area of the nominal ledger to pop that in. So that's what we're going to look at today, and how the chart of accounts structure works. Now, just before we get stuck into the content today, I'll quickly run you through a little bit of housekeeping, which many of you have attended webinars before, you'll be familiar with, but for those that haven't, normal sort of process takes place. So you don't need a microphone for these sessions. If you do have one, if you enable it, you will find it's muted automatically. It does mean if you've got any questions for me today, you'll need to pop them into the questions panel. To access that, you just click the little speech bubble icon. It'll expand the panel. You'll have access to the box at the bottom where you can start typing your comments and your questions. Remember to click send, otherwise I won't get them. It is only myself running the session with you this afternoon. So do bear with me here and there if you do submit questions. If anyone wants a copy of today's slides, those are available to download during the session today. Do take that opportunity if you want them. The detailed information, though, you will find that in the Help Centre. You'll easily find that as well if you access the Help Centre, search for things like chart of accounts or whatever it is you're looking for. It should have all the step-by-step guides, etc. available to you. Now, this session is being recorded. A link to the recording will be included on your follow-up email. That is normally sent out around about an hour after we finish. So you get the link to today's recording, you get a link to our upcoming webinars, and also a link to our recordings page. Now, I'll come back to the recordings a little bit later on, but there's quite a few of topics that relate to this particular session, where we've badged them in the past as well. But this is again, which I suppose just concentrating on the starting point, which is looking at the chart of accounts itself. But there's a whole suite of recordings that follow on from this one if you do check that recordings page. So watch out for that. It's around about an hour after we finish. Right, so let's have a look at what we're covering in the session. So a little bit of a brief introduction to the chart of accounts itself. Today's session will mainly be demonstration. It's one of those, there's not a lot of theory to the chart of accounts. So we'll start with a brief introduction, but then get stuck into the demonstrations, giving you an idea of what you can do in there. So adding, editing, deleting a chart of accounts. We'll look at the categories, the nominal ranges. Probably the most complicated part of any is the floating categories. So we'll quickly discuss those, give you an idea of what they actually refer to. And then we'll look at also checking for errors as well. It's quite an easy thing to do, just a case of clicking a button. And then if there are any errors, it'll outline what they are. And it'll give you a link at that point as well on how to, well, the link will explain what that error means and how you go about correcting that. Just at the end, we'll explain more about the additional support, and also if there are any outstanding questions at that point, I'll try picking them up then. So let's start with a little bit of theory first of all. So a little bit of background. What is the chart of accounts? Well, the chart of accounts itself, it provides the structure for some of your management reports, not all of them. So it's not used by the trial balance, for instance, but when you run likes of a profit and loss, a balance sheet, there's other reports in the software as well, and also the nominal ledger list as well. You can display that based around your chart of accounts. It's used by advanced budgeting, that type of thing as well. But basically it provides the structure. So most commonly when you're running a P&L or a balance sheet, that's when you're going to come across it. And it basically helps the software determine whether a nominal code is a profit and loss or a balance sheet account. And that software uses that as part of the year-end clear down. It'll look at the profit and loss section of the chart of accounts to determine which ones it can basically clear down. And you can have multiple layouts as well. It's worth mentioning that. So our Help Center, or Help File, I should say, many years ago, it used to say you could have about, I think it was about 64,000 it used to say. You used to have different layouts. I've never come across that. So it's common to have one, maybe obviously you'll have to have one, but you might have more than that. You might have it for departments use. You might just have different variants of the P&L. So you might have a one which summarizes nominal codes, groups them together. Others you might want to show a detail level, so even down to individual nominal code level. It's something you can have a go of as well. So you can actually set up additional chart of accounts. And that's not going to really impact on anything else. Now, where you'll find this is within the nominal codes ledger, and on the toolbar at the top, you'll have that chart of accounts icon. So let's just get stuck straight into some demonstrations, and we'll run through hopefully everything that you need to know about that chart of accounts area. I'll share my screen and we'll get stuck in. So if we just quickly pop into nominal codes as an example, and if I run the trial balance, first of all, when we get access to the criteria, it just asks me for the period I want to run that for. So it doesn't use the chart of accounts. But if I click on the profit and loss or the balance sheet, when I run those reports, it will offer me, as well as the date range, it says, right, which chart of accounts layout do you want to use? So this determines your chart of accounts, it determines which nominal codes are picked up and which ones are grouped together or shown individually. So we'll see more about that as we go through. It's used in other areas as well. So just on your nominal codes list here, you can actually switch between list and analyzer view. If you're in analyzer view, you can actually choose your chart of accounts there. And it just displays your likes of your nominal codes in a different way. So you can see totals for like your sales section, your purchases section, and it uses that chart of accounts in the background to determine what gets added to what. But you tend to find most people, probably about 99% of our users, will actually leave that in list view. So there are some other areas as well, your comparative P&L, your prior year report, they will all also use things like the chart of accounts layout. Right, now if we click on the chart of accounts option, which is on the toolbar at the top here, it brings up this specific window. Not a lot in here, let's just maximize it. So I've got two charts of accounts. You have to have one. There's always going to be one listed. You can rename it and edit it if you want to, but there will always be one there. But as I say, you can have, especially it's unlimited, because I've never come across anyone that's got more than, say, about 20, 25 different layouts. Used to be many, many years ago when people were looking at, maybe the departments option wasn't as detailed. So you couldn't really run a departmental profit and loss. So you would have different charts of accounts, so it only picked up certain nominal codes. But these days with the departments ledger and other options in the software, a bit more flexible. So there's not necessarily that need to have different charts. But you might have different charts for different purposes. You might have one structure, which is more of a summary. So say you were presenting figures to, let's say, your bank manager, for instance, so you just want top level figures. You might have one chart of accounts, which adds a lot of nominal codes together, maybe just giving you one total for your sales. Whereas internally, you probably want a much more detailed breakdown. And that's where you would have a much more detailed chart of accounts layout. So I've got two there at the moment. Obviously, we'll be going into them in a few minutes' time. Quickly picking up on the options along the top here. So I'll just try and get these out of the way very quickly. Add, probably goes without saying this one. If I just put my initials in there, it'll ask you to give it a name. You click add, it pops out on your list, but it gives you a blank chart of accounts. I'll run you through the screen in just a moment. So I'll just save that so it's out of the way. So puts it on the list there. It does say partial. I'll be coming back to that one in a few minutes as well. Edit, you would highlight the layout that you're after, click edit, takes you into the edit screen, start making your changes. That's what we're going to be concentrating on in a couple of minutes. Copy, so rather than me maybe adding one and start setting that up from scratch, if you want to play around with it, probably easier just to highlight one, click copy, it'll pop it on the end for you. and then it means you've got an exact copy of this chart of accounts. Gives it a slightly different name. You can always go in, edit that, start making changes if you want to play around with it and learn a bit more about it. Now, the make default option, basically, if we highlight a chart of accounts, so let's just use this accounts detailed one. When we click make default, it updates this setting at the bottom. So to say the current chart of accounts is accounts detailed sales. It has two purposes. One is if you try to delete one that's flagged as current. So are you sure you wish to delete it? If I click yes, it'll say you can't delete the default. So whichever's flagged as the current at the bottom, it's sort of protected. You always have to have one flagged as the current, meaning that you can't get rid of all of them, which is why there's always one there. The other reason for flagging it as the default is when you go to run a report, so I'll go to run a profit and loss as an example, when the criteria values window appears, you'll find that the chart of accounts setting, it just picks up that default. I can always switch back to a different one, but it will pick that up. So if you're always running your report and clicking on the drop down and choosing a specific chart of accounts, then that's how you can get around that. Just flag it as the default. Now if I set that one back to the default, the top one, and then go back to another one, just as an example. So we'll choose this, the one that's flagged as being called partial at the moment. When you click delete, it'll remove it as long as it's not flagged as the current layout at the bottom there. So that's the secondary purpose. It stops it from being deleted. And the other one is when you run reports, it says you're having to select whichever is your default chart of accounts. Your print list, it'll just literally print that list out. I think that's just there for consistency. Maybe if you had 64,000 different layouts, you might use it, or you might use the send to Excel. I'll just click it so you can see what it does. It literally just sends that list across for you. Oh, it's working there. So it is just literally that list as well. So you're not, I don't honestly think you're going to get much benefit from those options in that screen, unless of course, again, you've got loads of different layouts and maybe you're trying to check, right, who uses what. Right, anyway, let's get back to editing a chart of accounts. So we'll run through I suppose, the main part of the chart of accounts. So this is the default structure that you're presented with. So we got two tabs. We got the profit and loss and the balance sheet. But toggle between them, you see the layout wise of the screen pretty much the same. So profit and loss, top section here, it's got the main sections that you'd expect to see on your profit and loss report. So sales, purchases, direct expenses, overheads and taxation. You can rename these if you want to. There is a sixth blank line there. You can't do anything with that. So I can try clicking, but it doesn't do anything. It's just there for, I think, consistency with the other areas. So you can't add another one in there. If you do want to change them though, you can change the titles. So rather than sales, if you wanted to call it like income, you can do that. And when you do that, it just means the sales section on your profit and loss report would be called income. The preview area on the right will give you an idea of the structure and what that would look like. I'm just going to leave mine set to the default though, which is sales. Set that back. So these are just essentially the section headings. The bottom section here is where you've got your categories, your nominal ranges. Now, if I just go back to sales as an example, what we've got in this bottom section is you've got a description of product sales, and then you've got a nominal range. Now, this is based, and it is always based around a low and a high value. It could be the same code in each one, meaning it's just going to pick up one. But the default, it's got some ranges in here. So what it's saying is when we run a P&L report, if we were to choose this chart of accounts, which is the default, when we specify our date range and choose this chart of accounts, it will then, what it'll do is it'll say, right, well, all the nominal codes in this range I'll add up all the relevant balances for those nominal codes, add them together, and if there is a balance, I'll include it on the report itself, and I'll use this description, in this case of product sales. Now that might be great for some purposes, but let's say internal purposes, you might want a much more detailed breakdown. That's what we're going to be looking at in a few minutes' time. Now you can have up to 80 ranges for sales, 80 for purchases, 80 for direct expenses, overheads, and also taxation. That is the limit. You can't add them in beyond that. So that is it is a restriction. You're most likely to, if you're going to come across that, you're most likely to come across it on maybe the overhead section. So do be aware, 80 is the sort of restriction per area. Now what we've got, and this sort of helps you to understand the nominal codes a little bit more. So in the sales section, you can see all of the nominal codes in that range fall into the 4,000 nominal code range. We click onto purchases, you can see the ranges relating to purchases, they're in the 5,000 range. Direct expenses in the 6,000 range. Overheads, 7,000 to end of the 9,000s, and in the middle of all of that you've got your taxation range as well, which is the low 9,000s. So you can edit them. If you've got your own ranges set up, that's fine, you can use those as well, but you probably need to edit your chart of accounts. Now let's say we wanted to amend the range. So we got product sales 4,000 to 4,099. Now that might be great when I am running a report for certain purposes, but it doesn't give me a lot of detail there. So if you do want to break it down, there's a couple of good function keys for you, F7 and F8. Now if I just click onto this secondary line, export sales, and I just press F7, F7 is used throughout your software to insert a blank line. And when I do that, I get this message. So it tells me, asks me to confirm. Inserting a line will move all categories down by one. You will lose any information on the last line of this section. Do you want to continue? So I'm going to click yes to that. Now what that does is it essentially moves everything down from wherever I had highlighted. Now it's only going to remove anything from the last line of the section if it's on the 80th line. So it's not going to get rid of this range, for instance, because it's the last line that I've got listed. It's only if it's on the 80th line. When you insert something, so F7, it'll remove that range from the structure itself. It doesn't have any impact on the nominal codes themselves, but it removes it from essentially this management report structure, your chart of accounts. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do that a few times. So I'll just click on the blank line, F7, and click yes, F7, yes, F7, yes. So F7 useful for when you're, let's say you're keying in a batch of invoices or a batch of payments. You miss one out and you think, oh, I've missed that one. I need it to go higher up on the list. You can just click on your line, F7 on your keyboard. It would essentially insert a blank line and move everything down one. Now, when it's like this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to narrow this range down a bit. Now, I'm going to call this Sales North. So if I can actually type today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do 4,000 to 4,000. That means if I was now to run the P&L report, obviously it'll ask me for my date range and which chart of accounts I want to use. So if I'm using this structure, it's now going to look at nominal 4,000 only, and it would show that as an individual balance on the P&L report. So it's no longer going to group all the nominal codes in the range 4,000 to 4,099 together. We'll do another line. We'll do 4,001 to 4,001. So we'll do Sales Scotland. We'll do 4,002 to 4,002. And we'll do Sales Wales 4,003 to 4,003. Now remember, the original range went from 4,000 to 4,099. So I want to make sure really still other nominal codes in that range. So I just click onto the drop down and I go down to that sort of section, the 4,000 range. A bit too far there. It's very sensitive for the mouse today. So let me just click down to the right section. There we go. So we've got 4,000. We had originally 4,000 to 4,099. So originally that structure where it says product sales, it was including nominal 4,000, 4,001, 2, 3, 4, and also 4,009. It would have added all those balances together to show you one figure. But what we're now doing is we're splitting that. So we've broken it down to show individual balances instead. Now, maybe the rest of that range, I just think, well, what I'll do, I'll just call it miscellaneous. I'll do MISC, a little bit quicker for me to type, and I'll do 4,000 to 4,099. So I'm still maintaining the range overall, so still including the relevant balances, but I would now be showing sales north as a separate figure, sales south as a separate figure, sales Scotland, and then whatever was left in that range, still included, but again, it's going to show that separately. So F7, anyway, inserted a blank line. F8 will discard a line. So it just gets rid of that blank line for me and moves everything back up. I could have just left that blank line if I wanted to. It would make no difference to the report itself. So if I quickly save that, tells me it's updated. What I can now do is let's just quickly run a P&L report. I'll run it to preview. Now it's an older set of data. It's still based on the 2024 financial year, this set of data. So we'll OK that. And what we've now got on this report is in the sales section, we've got sales north, sales south, sales Scotland. I'm assuming sales Wales. There mustn't have been a balance on there. We can see the relevant balances in the relevant columns. Now, if you want more information about how the reports calculate and where they get the figures from, etc., we're covering that next week at this time in the management report session. So we'll be looking at the trial balance, the profit and loss, and the balance sheet, going in a bit more detail into those and drilling down on them, so that if you do run a report and you're thinking, oh, where's that come from, you'll have that knowledge going forward. Now, if I just go back to the chart of accounts, and what I'll quickly do is I'm going to reset this one. So I'm just going to change this back to product sales. See if I can type. I'm going to change the range back. I'm going to do 4,000 to 4,099. And what I'll do is I'll remove these other ranges where I provided the detail. So remember, I can just press F8 to remove them. So I'm back where I was at the beginning of the session. We'll just save that. And if I quickly run a P&L again, you'll see the difference. So again, just accept all that default criteria. This time, we no longer get that detailed breakdown in the sales section. We've got a line that says product sales. Essentially, it's grouping the balances from those nominal codes together now. So again, it all comes down to what level of detail you want. Hopefully after today, you might go in, start looking at your reports a bit and think, well, actually, when I am generating the P&L, I want that to be broken down. I do want to get to individual nominal code level. Now, one thing you can't do, if we just go back into the chart of accounts and we'll edit it. One thing I can't do with the ranges is say, right, I want to include nominal code 4,000. I want to include 4,200 in a single range. I can't do that if there's nominal codes that numerically sit sort of between them. The chart of accounts is always based on a low and a high. So it's something to bear in mind when you're adding in new nominal codes. If you wanted it to sit, say, within the export sales section of your chart of accounts, then you would need to give it a number so that it could be picked up in that way. So all of the sections work pretty much the same way. If you click through them, you'll see we've got some descriptions. We've got those low and high values giving us that nominal range. The balance sheet pretty much works in the same way, different nominal codes, of course. Now, there's one exception, and it's to do with the current assets and the current liabilities. Now, when we click into current assets, you'll see rather than just have one section here for the ranges, we've now got two. And it's the same for the current liabilities section. So this middle section works in exactly the same way as what we've just looked at. You've got your descriptions, you've got your low and your high. So again, you would have up to 80 ranges available within that section. The bit that's different is this bottom section, the floating nominal accounts. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this is probably, if anything, this is the most complicated part of the chart of accounts. Now, the idea of a floating nominal code or nominal accounts is that when it calculates a balance, if it calculates an overall debit balance, it means it would show, essentially it would float between the current assets and the current liabilities. So if it's an overall debit balance or positive balance, it would appear as a positive current liability, current asset. If it shows as a negative, so credit balance overall, it's going to appear as a current liability. So it can float between the two, depending on what the calculated balance is. So the ones that are set up by default in the sort of floating nominal ranges or bank account and VAT liability. Now, some of you will be sitting there thinking, well, I don't want it to float between the two. It doesn't have to float between the two. What you can do is, if you wanted to, you could knock it out of this range completely, knock it out of the sort of the current assets and the current liability sections. So remove it and just put one range in this one here. Now, if we take your bank account as an example, let's say in month one, you've got a positive balance. You produce your balance sheet. That balance is going to show, because it's in the floating categories, it's going to show as a current asset. Month two, let's say you're now overdrawn at the end of month two. So your balance sheet, again, because it's in a floating category, it means it's then going to show as a current liability. So it floats between the two, depending on the calculated balance. Now, if you didn't have this floating category and you had the bank account in the, say, the current asset section up here, if you had a positive balance at the end of month one, which it would then say bank account on your balance sheet, and it would show you the appropriate balance. At the end of month two, if it was overdrawn, it would still appear in the current assets section, but it would show as a negative. So it depends how you want it to appear. Do you want it to float between the two? Always shown either as a positive asset or a positive liability? Or do you just want it to sit in a specific range? Now, some of you will be thinking, well, why on earth is VAT liability there? For some businesses, again, some months they'll be in a position where they can recover an amount, others where you have a liability. So it can float between the two. So this is just a default structure, very generic, but you can tailor it to suit your own needs. Now, if you want to add anything into the floating categories, so if I'll just put my name in as an example, can't even spell that today. Now, as soon as I tab out of that field, I get this message. Do you wish to copy this range to the current liabilities? Similarly, if I was working in the floating ranges within the current liabilities and I added in a range, it would say, do you want to copy this range to the current assets? Always click yes to that prompt. And I'll just put a range in there. So I'll just say 1270 to 1270. And if I do click across to the current liabilities, you'll see that has been entered for me. Similarly, if I click on that line and I remove it, as I tab out of that, it'll say, do you wish to copy this range? So essentially, do I want to make the same changes? If I click yes, and then I click back to the current assets, again, it's gone. So these two sections here, the current assets floating nominal accounts and the current liabilities floating nominal accounts, these ranges should always mirror each other. They should be exact. So you want same descriptions, same low, same high. Again, you can narrow it down to individual nominal codes if you wanted to. It's entirely up to you. Just depends on your preference. If you can get your head around that bit, the floating nominal accounts, then you're onto a winner, because that's by far the most complicated part of that chart of account structure. So I do hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, let me know. Just pop a quick message in the questions panel. I can always try and run through that again. But other than that, the rest of the structure, so long-term liabilities, capital reserves, it's exactly the same. You might have slightly different descriptions, slightly different ranges, depending on the business category you chose when you first set up the software. Now, if I go back to the profit and loss, and I click into the sales section, and let's say I make those changes again. So remember to insert that blank line, F7. I click yes to that prompt, just do it a few times, just so I can then demonstrate the next part. So I'll do sales south again. We'll do 4001 to 4001. Sales Scotland. And then I'll just do MISC sales. I'll not go as in depth as what I did earlier. So it was I'll do 4003 to 4099. Now, just in case anyone spotted it, I was just going to say, can you spot the error? I haven't changed it yet. I haven't changed this one. Now, what that would mean, if I've got balances on 4000, 4001, 2, and 3, when I come to run my P&L report in this example, what it's going to do is it's going to look at this structure and say, right, for product sales, we're adding up all the balances that for nominal codes in this range. It would then add up the balances for the nominal codes in that range. Now that would mean, because this is always based on a low and a high value, this range, it means that 4000 to 4099 is also going to pick up the balance from 4001. But we've also got 4001 showing separately, which means it's going to double count that value. So there is a check option in here. So nice and easy. If you make any changes, just click check at the top. So I'll save the changes. Now, if you have any issues, it's going to come up with a warning, incomplete chart of accounts. So it then gives me the opportunity to run the errors report. I'll just run it. And it gives me these results. Now, the most common one is where you've maybe created a nominal code yourself, and actually it isn't included in the chart of accounts. So you would get, I'll try and demo that one in a moment. But this one's saying one of the following ranges is enclosed within the other range. So it's telling me in the main section, sales. In product sales, I've got a range 4000 to 4099, but also I've got sales south, 4001 to 4001. So this range, it's fully enclosed within that one. So it means I'm double counting it. And I've got other ones like that as well. So it's either going to say it's fully enclosed or the ranges overlap. So in this instance, we've nearly got identical ranges there, give or take a couple of nominal codes. So just in case, once you've finished, make sure you check your chart of accounts, make sure it looks right. Now, if I just leave those errors in place for the time being and I click save, and what we've now got on my list, I've got a description, and on the end of it, it says partial. So that's quite a common query. Why does my chart of accounts say partial on the end? If it says partial on the end, it means that you've got some sort of error within your chart of accounts. Now, what I see some people try to do is you edit your chart of accounts, you can see your description, and they'll try just clicking and removing the word partial off the end. But when you click save, again, you get that warning. And I'm back to the list, it puts partial back on. So partial on the end of your description, when you first go into that chart of accounts window, it indicates you've got some form of error. I'll just go and fix mine again. So I will just leave that at product sales, and I'm going to get rid of that one. So F8 to remove those lines. So I'm back to where I was. When I click check, I'll save the changes, and hopefully this is what you're going to get if you check yours. Chart of accounts updated successfully, and you'll then get no errors found in this chart of accounts, rather than errors found in your chart of accounts and then it forcing you to run a report. And if I save that, close, you'll see it removes the word partial from that description. So I hope you're with me again so far. Again, quick request just to go back over the floating nominal codes again. I'll quickly do that because we've got a little bit of time. So I'm just going to go back to that chart of accounts. So remember, the floating nominal codes, they only exist within the current assets and the current liability section. It's this section at the bottom here. So you need, again, if you make a change to one area, it needs to be mirrored in the other. So let's say I change this range 1200 to 1209. I'll just do 1200 to 1200. And if I get this message, do you wish to copy the range? So do I want to make the same changes? If I choose no, current liability has got 1200 to 1200, but in the current assets section, I've still got 1200 to 1209. Now, it's then not going to work correctly. It's not, potentially it's not going to, the balance that it calculates isn't necessarily going to float between the two. So you need to have them with the same ranges. Now, if I check that, so just run that error checking option at the top again. Let me make sure I've made the right change there. So I've done it. I'll mention that to someone. I think possibly this update it's missed that particular error off there. So you need, as I say, you're going to need to manually check these just to make sure they are the same. So I need them to be the same. Otherwise, potentially, it's not going to give me the correct figures. In this case, when I run that balance sheet. There's a few different ways you can describe this as well. So when we run a balance sheet, basically it'll add up the balance. If we're looking at just say we're just looking at the current assets only, and it says, right, we've got a description bank account. We're going to add up the balances against these nominal codes, add them together, and what's the balance? So in current assets, if it's a positive debit, it will show that in the current assets section, in the floating section. So it tags it onto the end of the current assets section. If it's a negative, it doesn't show it. Current liabilities, if it calculates a credit balance for the relevant period specified, then again it would show it. If it calculates a debit balance, then it wouldn't show it in the current liability section. So the same principle applies. It can float between the two, which is why those sections need to mirror each other. So I'm just going to set that one back. So make sure they're the same. Bank account 1200 to 1209. I'll just click into the other section, 1200 to 1209, they are the same. Brilliant. That's what I'm after. As I say, if you can get your head around that little bit, that floating section, then the rest of it's really straightforward. One thing to be aware of, we are running additional webinars. So next week, we're looking at the management reports themselves. And it will really, this sort of helps lay the foundations of that session. So we'll be looking at the trial balance, the profit and loss, and the balance sheet. So we'll be looking at the profit and loss, going through it and saying, right, well, we've got a figure on the profit and loss account. Where does it come from? So the profit and loss uses the chart of accounts to determine which figures to pull through. But we'll be going through that in a lot more detail next week. So do get yourself signed up for that one if you haven't already. Right, if you've got any questions for me, if you want to quickly pop them into the questions panel, you just need to click the little speech bubble icon on your toolbar on the right. It'll expand and you get access to that box in the bottom there. Remember, when you type in, click send, otherwise I don't see them. Now, as far as additional webinars is concerned, the link is included on your follow-up email. You get the links to the recording of today's session. You'll get the link to the direct link as well on the follow-up email to our registration page for both 50 accounts and 50 payroll. And also you can access our recordings as well. Now, I'm just going to quickly share my screen for a moment again. I'll just quickly show you that for a second. If I bring up my browser, and let's see, if you go to sage.co.uk/webinars, it'll bring up that page. So as far as the recordings is concerned, so this is where you can access all of our recordings. Obviously, we're running through this report design series at the moment. That's one of those digital badge series. But if we scroll all the way down to the management reports section, you'll see working with the chart of accounts is there. We've got the other sessions in there as well, which complement that. So do check out the recordings. This one here, though, the trial balance, profit and loss, and balance sheet, that's the session we're running next week. If you're wanting to sign up for that one, again, just access the live webinars page. So there's the remnants of the report designer sessions we're still running. Bring your attention to this one, International Accounting Day. I think that's on the 10th of, is it the 10th of November next month? That will be that. Essentially, they celebrate that day. Very famous day, that one. I'm sure you've all heard of it. But these are the sessions that we are going to be running just to sort of celebrate International Accounting Day. In addition to that, obviously, this is the session you've attended today, Understanding Your Chart of Accounts. If you just scroll down, and it's this session here. So Friday the 17th, 11 o'clock, we're looking at the trial balance, the profit and loss, and the balance sheet. If you haven't yet signed up for that, make a beeline for that one as soon as you get your follow-up email, or just head to sage.co.uk/webinars when you leave today's session. Get yourself registered. Hopefully I'll see you on that one as well. Right, brings us towards the end. I'll see if there's any outstanding questions in just a moment, but let me quickly thank you just in case you're about to disappear. Thanks for coming along. I hope you've enjoyed it, found it useful, giving you a little bit more insight into your nominal ledger structure. So the way that nominal codes are grouped together, so your sales being in the 4,000 range, but remember those mini sort of structures within the sales section. Same for your purchases, your overheads. So if you're trying to set up new nominal codes, take a look at your chart of accounts. It can help you get that nominal code in the right area. Now, if you can take a minute to complete that survey, that'll pop up as you leave today's session. It'd be greatly appreciated. Let me know your thoughts. If you've got any ideas, topics you'd like to see covered going forward, let us know. Should take you about a minute max. And that follow-up email will be with you in round about an hour's time. So if you're about to leave, many thanks. I think I've got one question outstanding, and it was from Natalie. Natalie, you were just asking there, Not related to the webinar, I accept that. It's not, but how can you delete unused nominal codes? Right, let's go off track a little bit. Right, get rid of that browser. So if it's a nominal code I don't use, so let's just close out of there for a moment. Get back to the nominal codes list. So let's just pick on this one, leasehold property. Now, if I don't use that nominal code, and let's say I've never used it, then it may be a case I can just highlight it and then click delete at the top. So it'll try and delete it if it can, which it has in this instance. It won't let me get rid of a nominal code that has a balance against it. Similarly, if I've got activity against a nominal code, it also won't let me delete that nominal code. But simply deleting a nominal code, it's just a case of highlighting it and using the delete option on the toolbar at the top. But it will only let you get rid of those nominal codes that meet certain criteria. So it's got to have zero balance, it's got to have no activity, it mustn't be flagged as a control account. So those are the core bits. Now that is covered in a separate webinar recording. If you look at the recordings, it does cover that. So there's a section called clearing records, and in amongst that, it goes through deleting customer, supplier, nominal codes, and bank accounts. So it'll go through that in a bit more detail than what I can cover for you. Simon, you were just asking there, was the multiple layouts of the P&L to do with the detailed sales you explained? So yeah, the idea with the chart of accounts I've got, so this one, when we have the two, we've got the default, and I've got this one, the detailed sales. So if I just edit that one, and you can see in the sort of sales section, I've got that set up already. So it means that, you know, when I go to run that P&L, so I just click the P&L option. Depending on sort of the level of detail I want to be on my report, I could choose that default where that sales section was grouped together under that product sales, or I could choose the other structure, which gives me the detailed sales output. So I can easily get between the level of details just by choosing the appropriate chart of accounts. I don't need to keep going into the chart of accounts and selecting the making amends to it each and every time. That structure's there, and I just need to select it when we at the time of running the report itself. So that's the only reason it's there. So have a go of that. Remember, if you are going to amend your chart of accounts, you can have a go in your live company if you wanted to. What I would encourage you to do though is when you highlight the one that you do use, and use your copy function. A copy function isn't available if you're on the essentials level. It is if you're on standard or professional. Essentials, it's not. But if you're on essentials, just search our help center, and there's a guide on essentially how you can copy one. Much easier to copy one and then start making amends than it is to start from scratch. So have a go. If you get stuck, remember our support team's on hand as well. Right, I'll end the webinar just at that point. If you think of anything more, just get in touch, drop me an email. You can reply to any of the webinar emails. That'll come either direct to me or to my team's mailbox, and we'll get an answer back to you as soon as we can. If you need to speak to someone desperately, you want an answer there and then, do get in touch with our support team. So we'll end the webinar at that point. Do get signed up for the management report session. It complements this one really well. And hopefully I'll see you on some other webinars very, very soon. Many thanks.